Hey everyone, welcome to the Tradie Success Podcast. I'm absolutely excited to be here with Ben Doran from Blitz Air Conditioning. So excited about this story because Ben joined us just over a year ago, or just under a year ago.
Yep, end of May last year.
And has had some incredible results from our program. So we wanted to go back and just talk around how he's got to a point where he's pretty much got operational time freedom, where he's going to go to Europe for 5 weeks while the business runs without him, with a team of 8 going from sole trader, and your sole trader still in September last year, weren't you? That's when we did the hiring.
Yeah, so that's when Dylan, my first employee, started September.
Amazing. So just to show you how you can grow and what's the potential, really excited to be here with Ben. So welcome.
Thanks, mate. Happy to be here. It's up on the nice sunny coast of Byron.
Yes.
Bit of a contrast from Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. So Ben's actually spending his test week, part of our Freedom Fighters program, where before you do your 4-week disconnected from the business and testing that the business will run without you, you do your test week where you go away for a week and you let the business run without you just to see if anything breaks. But you're going into a different time zone, into a different country for your 5 weeks, so it's going to be good to see.
Yeah, it was actually funny. I posted an Instagram story yesterday, and one of my workers, who's a good friend of mine, messaged me to that story and said, "Where are you?" So my team actually didn't even know I was in Byron Bay. So
yeah.
when we say disconnect, that's actually how much of a disconnect this week has been, which is pretty cool.
Amazing. Cool. So, love to go right back. So, tell us about your first couple of years in business and where you were at and some of the things that maybe what you thought business would be like when you started and then what you sort of faced in those first couple of years.
Yeah, so the journey actually started when I was, like most guys, I was still working for another company and then started doing cashies on the weekend, little ads on Gumtree, Marketplace, and then all of a sudden just got to the point where I was just overloaded and decided, why not have a crack at it myself? And very naive, had no business experience, had no goals. It was more just
see what happens.
Yeah, I just had so much cash work that it was like I can't actually focus on my actual job. And that's where it got to a point where I sort of spoke to my company that I was at, and I said, I'm just so burnt out. I'm just doing too much work. And that's where I sort of ended it. But I was sort of, for the first 6 months, well, probably for the first 12 to 18 months, really, I relied on subbying a lot. And the frustrations with subbying, you sort of, you're realising you're paving the way for someone else rather than... just that early, I know we're going back, but that first 2 years I look at in contrast to the last 12 months, my journey realistically didn't start until last May. So that first 2 years, you just head butting against a wall type.
Yeah, right. Were you still subbying a lot when you joined the academy?
So believe it or not, the company I was practically full-time subbing for, I'd built such a good relationship with him to the point now where he's actually a member in the academy because of my recommendation to him.
Yeah, right.
So now he's in the academy. I don't subby to him anymore just because obviously my company's got too much on. But now I spoke to Louis and I sort of highlighted a few of the things in his company that I was like, mate, you've got to join the academy. Like, this is what they've done for me. And even he laughs now. We sort of catch up and he's like, I can't believe from when you first started with subbing to him, how far I've come in that short space of time, and that's why he's joined the academy, because he could see how much growth and how much of my whole change of life happened in such a short period of time. So
yeah, man. So if you were subbying up until May last year, that was effectively you working for someone else anyway. So it's like you've almost started your company a year ago and grown to what you have in a year.
And that's the thing. So I had a very small client base up until like up until last May.
Yeah.
And that was where that mindset of me being a good tradesman that was where my mindset was. It was like, I'm making good money here, but if you don't work for him, you don't get paid.
Yep.
So you sort of, it's not like you're jumping. It's in a sense you're taking that easy road. It's comfortable because you're not branching out and taking a bit of risk and trying to build your own company. So that's why I say my journey really as a business owner started last May. Yeah. And that was when I started with you guys.
Unreal.
And I've said this to a few people. I've said this to you. The reason I actually started, I sort of I had a phone call with my old man, and I still visibly remember that moment. I was driving on the freeway home, and I was like just an emotional wreck. I sort of rang him, and I was just like all over the place, so burnt out. My emotions were like to the point where I was just like, I just felt like I was just about to explode. And I spoke to him, and Dad's sort of been there. They're like a very supportive family, but I remember the conversation Dad said to me. He just said, "Don't let your ego control your decision." He said, "Look, you've had a good crack at it, but at the end of the day, like businesses." At that point, I was 26. Yeah. So he's like, "Business isn't everything. Go and enjoy your 26s." Yeah. And I specifically said to him, I said, "No, I'm going to have one more crack at it. I'm going to give it 12 more months, and I'm going to go and get some advice." And so obviously I started looking online, and all of a sudden the academy ads started popping up in me feed. Yep. And then I had that conversation with I can't remember, it might have been Anna or someone on that first initial phone call. Yep. And it was just like this relief for someone that's 26 and running a company. That was one of my biggest issues that I found coming to the academy, was like I didn't have anyone to turn to talk about business with, because I'm in a situation where no one else my age is doing the same things. And when you're going out on the weekend or so, like you can have a conversation with someone, but unless they understand what you're going through, it's like you just feel like you're just wasting. Yeah, they don't get it. They just don't get it. Yeah. And yeah, like when I first joined the academy, that relief of like I'm in a group with 50 other people that are exactly the same situation as me, and like you'd have calls with the academy, and people are like, you can just see people are just so burnt out, and they just want someone to understand what they're going through. Yeah. And that was like, this relief came over me when I first joined the academy. It was like, holy shit, there's other people in this same position that people get it. People understand what I'm going through. Yeah. So yeah, that was probably my experience when I first joined the academy. That's so cool, man. Like that's the exact feeling I felt like scaling Response Electricians. And I felt so alone. You know, I couldn't turn to anyone, talk to people at the wholesaler. They'll give you super shallow advice, but they knew you were a competitor, so they're like, or sometimes you don't even know if it was true. And you know, you just felt like you needed to talk on a deeper level to get that relief. And I felt so lonely, you know, and the bigger we got as a company, the more alone I felt, because there was less people I could connect with. Yeah. And you know, that's, you know, Master Electricians was massively helpful once a year when we did the conference. Like they would go and connect with some people and they got it. Yeah. And I was like, wow, why can't we have this all the time? And you know, hence why I was so passionate about creating the academy and that environment where people can have that support, you know, 24/7. Yeah, and that's spot on. Like the early days, I was saying before, early days, you feel like you just want to speak to one-on-one with the coach. You want to, but that quickly disappears when you know that you've got the community that you can turn to that are using the same job management system, or they're in a same situation or time frame of where you're at. You can turn to them, and a lot of the times you'll get an answer straight away rather than needing that coach. And then you're like, bang, I didn't even have to waste more than 10 minutes. I'm straight on to it. My friends have got my back. Yeah. You're sort of like, oh shit, this has worked well with Joe Blow's company. Yeah. let's implement that in mine.
Yeah.
And that's probably as you get on a bit more with the academy. But yeah, at the start, the incubator, I say it all the time, the incubator changed my life. Like I was just like, I was so tunnel vision. And it just expands the horizon of what you can actually achieve.
Yeah. So incubator is all about like expanding your mind and actually teaching it, because that's why it's so like theory intensive, you know, like, so it's two hours every week, you're just like chocked with business knowledge. And over that 10 weeks, it's about creating awareness around all the things you could do.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think, what's some of the biggest takeaways you got from the incubator stage of Freedom Fighters?
Incubator was probably more because I'd sort of built this base, that I had a really good base. I just didn't know which way to turn. Yeah. Incubator practically gave you this dome of every different angle you wanted to, that you hadn't implemented. You could go. That was what I probably at the start it took me a bit to understand. You don't need to implement everything you learn in that incubator. Yeah. But after 12 weeks, my mindset of where I can take my company and just the minute changes that, for instance, one that I found, it's such an easy thing to do is implement that review system where you're getting 5-star reviews. And I know it's such a little thing and people just brush it off, especially male egos. Mm-hmm. They go, reviews, who looks at reviews? But it's so common now when people are online, everyone wants to look at reviews. So my revenue over summer increased dramatically on the back of those reviews. Like we went from 15 5-star reviews from people that knew me because they wanted like all mates that were like, oh yeah, I want to help him out. He's done a good job or whatever. To then, I think we're at 150 5-star reviews, somewhere around that mark. Yeah. And the comments I get from my customers, they're like, you weren't the cheapest quote, but your reviews are fantastic. Yeah. We want to use you. It's such a common comment on the phone to Amanda, my admin now. She's like always talking about people that refer to our reviews. Yeah. And I know like that is such a minute change. All it is like, I know it's not easy to get reviews, but around your circle from people you have done work for, it's limited. You can get them up to a point where they're actually and that's such an easy thing to do at the start, and then as you grow you put in the systems and it comes naturally. But that in its sense is people just fob that sort of stuff off, but that was what the incubator was. It was more about honing in on the little steps that make such a big impact. Yeah. And the 12-week incubator, there was so many days I did the night session, you'd get off and I couldn't sleep. Can't sleep. I couldn't sleep because I was like, how am I going to implement this? When can I do it? And that like it takes me back, and that's why sort of when we do these strategic calls now and stuff, like it gives me that same feeling. It's like, oh, I forgot about that. We did that in incubator. I really want to implement that now. So that's a part of that sort of where you don't have to implement everything at the start. Yeah. But as you're still doing these, still doing their training with the academy, that's where it always pops up and gives you another reminder. All right, let's implement this.
And you've got the time now because you've created the time. You can do those things.
Yeah. So this week it's sort of been getting out of bed. I've got to do this today. I don't have a set time. I don't have to be. And while this is a bit of a trial phase and it's all nice to sort of have a bit of a break, but just chatting with you before about what area of the company I now want to go and work in sort of a sales role and a BDM role, knowing that I don't have to check over every quote or invoice. That's a part of the systems we're now building, and that's the biggest thing. You just don't have the time to build these systems until you get staff.
The space. Yeah. And I think that's our core goal for everyone in our Freedom Fighters program, is to get you to operational time freedom. And for the listeners that don't know what that is, it's your business runs without you under management. So you've got an ops manager, you've got an admin, and you've got the required team of billable resources, so your tradies and apprentices, to have the profitability to support those roles. And by doing that, you've got then unlocking the flexibility in your own schedule to design your own role outside of the busy operation. And so like BDM, opening a new department, starting a new business, getting into a different field of investment or whatever, you get to choose. That's the best thing.
Yeah.
And you can take a holiday for 5 weeks and the business runs without you profitably just as good as if you were there.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. So I think what I love about what you've done is you've taken our advice, especially in the growth system stage and in Freedom Fighters. After Incubator, you've obviously learned all that stuff, but now it's time to take action and implement.
Yeah.
And can you tell me about that call we were on in September? Because that was the start of you just going ballistic in terms of growth.
Yeah, so at that point, and it's a common sort of thing, you don't have to ever look for work. I'd never followed up quotes. I'd never done anything like that because my capacity was at its full. I'd just signed on Dylan as my first employee, and I met up with him in a pub and I sort of said to him, I said, look, you're my last crack. I said, like, this is where I want, and I'd sort of done the incubator and I'd done a little bit of training on culture and stuff like that, and completely changed flicked a switch on the way I ran or managed staff, and built a lot of stuff out with one of the coaches on building that culture. And it's amazing once I'd sort of created that vision from training with you guys to then putting that vision onto the new guys that I was looking to hire.
Yeah.
It's like their eyes just light up and they're like, we want to be a part of this. Yeah. So Dylan was my first guy, and I said to him from day dot in the pub, I said, look, if you're loyal to me, I'll be loyal to you. And I said, this is where I want to take the business and this is the vision. I've got a Europe trip next year. You're my first guy, stick with me, and you'll be the man that gets the role to sort of run that, which is all good in theory. So Dylan jumped on, and he was all guns blazing. And Dylan, the ad that we made with Jordan was so targeted to a guy like Dylan. He had a crack at running his own business with a partner, and realised how hard it was. Mm-hmm. That didn't work out for him, so he sort of loved my theory of what I wanted to grow with the company. He jumped on, and then 2 weeks in, he fell off a ladder and broke his wrist. So we were back to square one pretty quick, and then that's when I kept the ad rolling. And then 2 guys... Before
we go there, can we talk about how you felt before you hired Dylan? Because this is like a lot of people struggle to feel confident enough to put someone on. So what finally motivated you to put a tradie on to get the support which unlocked the time for you to maximise opportunity? So I guess that reminds me, my biggest doubt was based on myself and my numbers. So I had a few coaches calls based on, and I know this is such a common thing with people in the academy now, everyone reels off what their revenue is or what they're turning over, but no one at that early stage really knows much about their numbers. Mm-hmm. So I got a real good crunch on my numbers with you guys, and every piece of advice from everyone was, you're carrying too many overheads. Like, you've got all these overheads. And my biggest fear was, and this is the reason I didn't hire or actively hire, was my theory was that staff were the biggest cost. So I'm going to have to foot this bill every week or every month. This is, if I put it on a staff member, I've got to find. You've got to have the profit sitting
you've got to have the profit.
And
that's that naive mindset that you're not taking into account. Your operating expenses each month are way more costly than putting one guy on that's actually going to bring you in money.
Yes.
So that was my biggest fear. Once I had a few calls with you guys, and it was more like every coach had the same opinion. They were like, you need to hire.
Yeah.
That's the only, don't focus on anything else but to hire. And so that was, that was that first sort of push that I needed. And then...
Because we see even people with $1,000 or $2,000 average net profit just can't grow anymore because they've got life situation where they can only work X amount of hours a day. And so they can't actually get enough billable hours in their day to make the profit that would pay for a tradesperson. And then these people are ballsy because they're like, I don't even have the money in my bank or in the profit and loss to hire someone. And then you do it, and then they just go from averaging 2K net profit to 10K net profit a month, every month. Because their revenue goes right up because they're filling their schedule with this work.
Yeah, I still look it back to sort of 12 months ago in the middle of peak season and had a huge revenue from just myself.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the quarter, that's when I started to understand my numbers a bit more, and I was like, I still made no money. Yeah. Like I worked all these hours, and then the minute sort of all this, you gave me the confidence to go, just put people on and see what happens. And then obviously once Dylan broke his arm, he was out of action and I was back to square one. So Dylan recommended one of his friends, and then I had another guy apply on my ad at the same time, and I was like, I really want them both.
Yeah.
So I then I had another call with you, and I was like, look, I don't want to let these two go because they're really good, but I know Dylan's going to be back in 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. So that's where I never, hands down, never would have made this decision ever. I'd had a call with, I think Jordan was like, just do your numbers. And then I had a call with Greg, and Greg's like, why haven't you hired them already? Greg's like, hire them right now. If they're good and they're going to work, hire them right now.
Yeah.
So I'm like, righto, this is my last hurrah. I'm having a crack. So then it was just that mindset. And then, so that first quarter of last year, we had just a standard sort of revenue, and that was when it was just me, and made next to no profit for the quarter. And all three guys started at the same time, and I remember that feeling of like, holy shit, I've never had to worry about what is coming. So then
where's the work going to come from?
So then instantly, once you've hired them, you've gotten past that fear of, all right, should I hire them, to now, how the hell am I going to find the work for them?
Yeah.
So then we start, all of a sudden I'm ringing you and going, right, I'm nervous that I'm not going to have enough work for them. And then all of a sudden, and this you've heard this before, but it was just so ridiculous. But I started getting on the phone and following up quotes that I hadn't ever followed up. Still, like, we're still pretty slack on it because we're sort of at capacity at the minute. But I rang a quote from 6 weeks earlier that was a $14,000 quote, and the guy accepted it on the phone. It was the second call that I made. the second quote follow up from 6 weeks earlier, and I just remember that feeling like,
how much have I lost by not doing this?
How many times have I lost a quote because someone's gotten busy and I haven't followed it up?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start tweaking these, all right, your motivation level, and you start finding this part of you that you've never had to do in business that now becomes such a thrill for you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we ended up having record month. We went 6 months in a row where we had a record month, and our profit margins were just through the roof. And all of a sudden, like, my mindset went from I'm too nervous to put on staff to how the hell can we find more staff? And it's just that first bit of confidence. Like, right now, I think I'm so glad I had that push from you with the 3 staff at once. Like, not everyone I spoke to at the time, apart from you, were like, be cautious, like three guys at once. And still to the last 12 months is the best decision I made. Yeah, man, so. I just see it as you create the capacity, you'll grow into it. Yeah. But the fear that people have is, I might not have the work. But the thing is, when you're put in that position, you always go and find the work. Yeah. And people that put one tradie on will go and find the work for one tradie. Put 3 tradies on, you'll go and find the work for 3 tradies. Like, that's 100%. Where your mind shifts. And now 12 months on, like, it's part of my whole life now. Like, this, it's more just sink or swim mentality, but it's calculated sink or swim. It's build the processes, and it comes down to mathematics in the end, and that's one thing that you guys have taught me so much, is just like this isn't just a fluke by putting on tradies that the work's going to come. It's just part of the actual process, and it's just that confidence of going having a crack. And back to the point of people with no money in the bank, like I didn't have stacks of money in the bank. I just had the mindset switch that this is my last hurrah. Like I'm having 1 year where I'm going to have a crack at it. And even I had a call with Kirk where I said to him, I'm going to sell one of my investment properties because I really want to have a crack over summer and have money in the bank to take risks and support it. And Kirk goes, have a look at your revenue. Why do you need to do that?
You don't need to do it.
So then over the 6 months, we were laughing about it yesterday because he's like, did you sell your investment properties? I'm like, no, I'm bloody glad I didn't do that. Now it's just more about fine tuning, and that's the level I'm at now with sort of the processes and systems. Yeah,
and then a fascinating thing about what you've done as well, because people think, I might not have the work, right? If I hire this tradie, I might not have the work. You've talked about how you haven't even had to go out and get the work yet.
Yeah.
Because you're just maximising the opportunities of what would normally be lost opportunities, like you said, following up the quotes and making the most of the opportunities that are in front of you organically.
100%. We sort of, now that I'm starting to do all these systems and actually look at how many jobs we're doing a month, what our capacity is, we went over our January and February months and all the leads. We had to get rid of all the leads that came through, and in February we missed out on 120 leads that we just couldn't get to. Yeah. So and February was our biggest ever month we've ever had. Yeah. And you just go, like,
what could have it been?
What could have been? And that's that thing. Like I still one of the things that I really want to harp on now is constantly going to chase the right work and better work, and I'm starting to free myself up, but it's like it naturally comes the minute you sort of build that capacity. You cover more jobs, you get more referrals, more follow-up work comes from those jobs. So you go from doing 40 or 45 jobs a month to 200 jobs a month that we're sort of actively doing now. Yeah. And what comes from 200 jobs compared to 45, it's just simple math again. Yeah. Like, you're obviously going to get more referrals, you're going to get more follow-up sort of stuff. So, and that is a part of the process that I'm loving now. It's like, in theory, it's easy to say this is going to happen, but now it's actively happening, and it's time to adjust to these. So, and that's the part of business that I'm getting loving now. So passionate about. Yeah, man. I think a really important thing that you did was book your holiday as well. Yeah. Because that put the pressure on. That's like signing up to a competition. Yeah. It's like, I can't turn back now. I've got to make these moves, and I've got to do this. Otherwise, you're sort of like, oh, I've got time. 100%. You know? Yeah. I actually say this all the time. I'm like, it's the best thing I ever did. Yeah. And we've spoken about it. Like, it's not like it's been an overnight booking. We've spoken about this since September. Yeah. It's been a plan, how to execute, and the only way to execute it was by building a base of staff and then creating like a culture and systems that can support it while I'm away. So, because we could work backwards from that holiday. I remember on that call saying, do you want to go away and work while you're away, or do you want the business to run without you? And you're like, run without me, of course. And I'm like, all right, well, we have to start hiring. I mean, I'm planning to fall in love on a sail to Croatia, so I don't want to have to be on the computer. Yeah, I love that. And I also said, look, we got to get this ops manager by 6 months, because we have to get to a position where we can promote someone or get someone in to train them up for that period. So by the time he went away, they're already taking over the reins and they've had the practice, rather than getting, hey, I'm leaving, you're at ops now, see you in 5 weeks. Yeah, and that's like, it's sort of that as well has been such a big mindset switch. And Dylan's come in, and I brought Dylan in early. Yeah. And I said, right, we've had a good summer, we've got money in the bank, I'm really gonna implement him to stay in the office full time. Yeah. And that was similar to where you just don't understand until it actually happens, and then your mind just completely switches. But I said to Kirk, I was like, by bringing Dylan in, I'm going to take a profit hit, we're going to take a work hit, yada yada. Dylan coming into the office for the first 3 weeks, we've never had so many quote acceptances, because I wasn't getting to the quotes in time for these people to go, well, this is efficient, let's go with them. So Dylan comes in and all of a sudden these quotes are just flying out the door.
Maximising
and all of a sudden,
opportunity.
so then May is one of our quieter months of the year. It turns out that we had the most revenue we've ever had in May. So then all of a sudden it's like I didn't expect that. So now I've got to combat how the hell I'm going to do this. So now our biggest issue is having Dylan in the office. Now his role is getting to capacity because of
the amount of work.
The amount of work's coming from it. So now we're adjusting to automating the quoting system, like we've spoken to you about.
Yeah.
And now it's about building that so that the guys on site follow a process to be able to quote. So then you look at that and you go, well, there's your efficiency goes up. Yeah. Create more freedom, but in saying that, to any of the boys that are listening, I still couldn't have done it without my guys, the culture we've built in the group, and just the trust and faith I have in them is just second to none, and that stems from the academy as well, because I can assure you I definitely wasn't a good manager before that.
Yeah.
So now. And that's the biggest thing about the academy. You can talk all day about all the different things, but it's just so many areas of business that you just don't think of. Like when you're a tradie and you've got one guy, it's
still fight or flight.
Yeah, you're a tradie sort of thing.
Yeah.
You never when you go into business, you don't picture yourself to be a leader, or you're dealing with 6 different personalities, emotions. Now it's just a daily thing that you just so that's that side of things. When people are sort of questioning what the academy are going to do for you, it's not just we're going to sort out your numbers and tell you what trigger to pull. It's creating a business that is going to thrive rather than just sort of gets through.
And the vehicle of the business we're creating in the academy is to give you your best life as well. And I think what I'm most passionate about is to help people like you get to that stage, and all of our members, where the business runs as a tool for you to live your best life. And that's why I think that what makes the academy different from any other coaching company out there. Firstly, I understand it because I went through it. Secondly, we've designed our program to help people live their best life while they grow. And then as the business is there to help you live that best life, why most people get into business is having more flexibility, to be able to spend more time with the family or the kids, or go more traveling, or have experiences and do all these things. And you were just saying before, yesterday, that you were amazed at how your life is changing now outside of the business.
So, and that's the biggest thing. That's why now I'm just so passionate about it, because my mindset, I'm a massive David Goggins man, and it's all about building calluses on the mind. And since putting in these systems and actually structuring out how your day is going to be, it's amazing how much that correlates into your life as well. So you've got I'm so much more structured with my gym, and alcohol as well. That's probably one thing that I've since getting into this period and having coaching and seeing that side of life. It's sort of I didn't realise how much of a hole I was in with alcohol and sort of drugs on the weekend, and now I'm sort of at the point where I barely drink. I'm sort of drinking once a month, sort of set up, and it correlates with my business. My business is now going to a new level, and I feel like I was probably stuck on that hamster wheel. Just one of the things that took me a long time to realise was I'm not your standard everyday sort of guy. It took me so long to realise for what I'm doing at my age is is not normal.
Yeah.
And so you're hanging around with your mates, your footy mates. You're getting on the piss every weekend, and at the time it was sort of my way out of that
distraction.
It was a distraction. So I was getting so hammered or so wasted drunk.
Yeah.
And I'd do that every weekend, and that was my way of releasing myself from the day-to-day thoughts of
pressure
and the pressure and now the way my days are structured, and knowing that I don't have to go in tomorrow, or my phone doesn't ring every 5 minutes now.
Yeah.
That I look back and just go, holy, that's how bad my life at that time was. You don't realise that that's terrible for your life. You're under so much stress. You're drinking. You've got really bad habits. So now, with this, just the way it all just correlates, and that's what I'm sort of trying to say to people. I'm big on. It's all good to be busy and to try and do as much work as you can, but you as a person can only do so much.
Yeah.
And the only way you relieve that is by putting staff on.
Yeah.
Delegating new people to take on roles. So.
Yeah. And to build your business to a point where you show up as your best self for the team as well. And like you're saying, dropping the drink, dropping the drugs, getting into great habits, all that stuff I went through as well. Same sort of thing. I was just getting blind just to disconnect from reality because it was so stressful. And I was like, the only way I knew how to handle it,
Yeah.
And so then I was like, no, I need to find a different way. And I didn't realize at the time, for me, it was always situational. I was like, oh, I've got time now. Yeah. And I didn't actually have the awareness to see that. It's because I hired someone and that took the time. And that's why I'm so passionate. Please hire, you're going to have the time. To everyone. Yeah. And we'll help you do it. We'll help you fill the gap. But we don't even need to help people once they've made that decision.
Is that something that you can also, I feel with the release, with the drinking and with that release of pressure, and I feel the academy for me has been that second, someone you can speak to that understands, going back to understanding.
Yeah.
Have you found, was that part of your stage where you were sort of more advanced than where your friend group was?
Yeah.
Not in a sense of being arrogant or anything, but you're just doing different things, and you sort of, by getting on the piss, it's just that way of relieving, but
also connecting with people that that's what everyone else is doing.
Everyone else is doing. So
yeah.
By having the academy, I feel it is a bit of a pressure relief in that sense that you can chat to people that are going through that same thing, and I've definitely found that's a part of the habit change.
Yeah. No, it's so good, man. And it's just the beginning. This is the exciting part. So
now the next 12 months is, I guess the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
The next 6 weeks is going to be probably going to be interesting.
Yeah.
See how we go.
So you go on your trip, and everyone that's listening, hope you got fucking bunch of inspiration and motivation to take some action from Ben. But Ben's going to go on his trip. The business is going to run without him while he's away, and when you get back, we're going to have a chat again.
Yeah, I reckon we get Dylan involved as well.
Get Dylan involved and see how it all went.
See how Dylan went without me.
If you're keen for that, shoot us a message, say that you're super pumped from this session, and I could forward it on to Ben and let him know that you've been helpful. But you're fucking inspirational, man.
Good stuff. Couldn't have done it without you.
Thanks, man.
The academy changed my life.
Can't wait to see what you do next. It's really exciting.
Let's go.
Legend. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us. See you guys soon.